Hi guys! So since you've enjoyed my previous two Planet Zoo videos so much, I wanted to make another one, but it felt a little silly to just extend my animal wish list by another like 60 animals. I think I've covered pretty much all of the species that I feel passionately about, and I've loved coming up with DLC ideas in the past, what sort of packs I'd put together based on the animals I wanted most at the time. Like, for example, I was really championing an Islands pack for a while there, until Tropical and Oceania totally squandered it. But with support for PC likely ending soon and having covered more than 90 species I'd still like to see in the game, I thought it would be fun to play pretend and put myself in the place of Frontier and think about what DLCs I would release to round out the animal roster leading up to the end of support. I really wanted to get in, or at least mention, all of the animals from my top 40 wishlist video, and then when organizing them into packs, I pulled from my 50 more animals video to fill in the gaps, and then there are a couple species in here that I haven't talked about yet on my channel. But basically, to fit all those initial 40 animals in, that quickly bloated up the number of packs that I was putting together. And so even though I do believe support for PC will be ending pretty soon, possibly after just one more DLC, I'm going to be proposing 7 DLCs that would take support to the end of 2025. Think of this as a speculative, wishful roadmap. So yeah, to make that clear, I do not believe we're getting 7 more DLCs, although that is the dream. This is just for fun and what I would personally do to finish off support for this wonderful game. So usually we get 4 DLCs in a year. I don't know much about business and financial calendars, but I believe each DLC is meant to coincide with one of the 4 fiscal quarters of the year. Personally, I prefer thinking of it as getting one DLC for each season because that's easier for my mind to comprehend. So for the packs I'm proposing in this video, I'll be referring to their release dates seasonally rather than quarterly. So for example, in 2023, the Spring DLC was the Tropical Pack, the Summer DLC was the Arid Animal Pack, the Fall DLC was the Oceania Pack, and the Winter DLC was the Eurasia Animal Pack. Sometimes Frontier likes to connect a DLC to the season it releases in, like the Arctic Pack in winter or the Twilight Pack around Halloween, so I did take that into consideration. I took a lot of things into consideration. I put a lot of thought into this roadmap for you guys. In fact, I have so much to say that I've actually decided to split this idea into 2 separate videos, one for 2024 and one for 2025. I was going to do it all in one, but that quickly became not possible, or, like an hour-long video. These videos, they're going to be very much inspired by Red Panda Reggie's 2024 and 2025 DLC prediction videos, so definitely go check those out. Some of my picks are definitely inspired by his. So obviously for this video, we're going to be starting with 2024, and since we're 3 months in with no pack yet, it makes sense to start off with the Spring DLC. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't think we're getting a DLC this spring because we're getting Console Edition this spring. Console Edition comes out on March 26th, and the Planet Zoo team have been putting all of their focus into promoting that. Especially with Frontier's limited staff following the layoffs last year, I don't see them having the resources to create and advertise both Console Edition and a new DLC so close together. So yes, I'm suggesting that our quote-unquote spring DLC for 2024 is actually Console Edition. Heck, it even got its own key art, which adds to my theory that it's basically taking the place of our regularly scheduled DLC. And this isn't unprecedented for Frontier either. While I can't speak on Planet Coaster, I know that Jurassic World Evolution 2 follows the same quarterly DLC release schedule, or at least it did. Back in 2022, Evolution 2 released a DLC in March, one in June, one in September, and then one in December. Roughly the same schedule that Planet Zoo follows. Looking at Evolution 2 DLCs in 2023 though, they released one in March, one in August, and then one in November. This is because they put out a large free update in June that coincided with the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park. This anniversary update took the place of a June DLC. So think about these less as 4 DLC slots and more so as new content slots, if that makes sense. Frontier put out significant new content for Evolution 2 in June of last year, enough for it to replace a regularly scheduled summer DLC. Now, Frontier is putting out significant new content for Planet Zoo. They're bringing the game to console and are putting a lot into promoting and advertising it. So I do think that Console Edition is replacing our regularly scheduled spring DLC. So I'll be proposing the rest of the year's packs starting with summer. I just wanted to make that clear and encourage people to manage their expectations if you're still waiting for a spring DLC. Another thing is that since they follow roughly the same schedule, Planet Zoo and Evolution 2's DLCs usually release pretty close together, but here we are in mid-March of 2024. Evolution 2's spring DLC has just come out and there's still no sign of one for Planet Zoo, just Console Edition. So I do believe that's what we're getting instead. But hey, don't worry, remember it was confirmed that support for PC isn't quite done yet, and so there's definitely at least one more DLC coming. I'm just expecting them to skip over spring and for it to probably come around June. So let's finally get into the fun of this video and cover what I would do for the summer 2024 Planet Zoo DLC. For summer of this year, I'm proposing the Latin America Animal Pack. Yes, our last DLC, Eurasia, was also an animal pack, and usually Frontier likes to alternate between animal packs and scenery packs. But since that pattern was introduced, it has been broken, and we've gotten 2 scenery packs in a row before. And like I said, I think Console Edition is basically taking the place of a DLC, so technically they aren't actually back-to-back anyway. So Latin America Animal Pack it is. The term Latin America is commonly used to describe South America, Central America, Mexico, and the islands of the Caribbean. I really hammered it in during my last 2 videos that I think Planet Zoo could still use some more South American representation. There are a lot of species that could be added to the roster, and so I think an animal pack focused on the region would be a good idea and help bring many of these species to the game. So to start off my picks, every DLC has a flagship animal. That's the one featured on the key art and what they used most in the marketing material for a pack. So for the flagship of the Latin America Animal Pack, I've picked the South American coati. They're an arboreal species, a member of the raccoon family, and are found in South America. The coati sits at number 2 on the meta wishlist, so it's definitely in high demand by the community, and that's part of why it's the very first animal that we're covering here. My second pick is the ocelot, a well-known medium-sized wildcat found in South America, up through Central America, and even into Mexico and the southwestern US. They would also be arboreal, similar to the clouded leopard. The ocelot is number 12 on the meta wishlist, making it the most requested species of cat. Third is the roseate spoonbill, a wading bird found throughout South America, the Caribbean, and along the coasts of southern North America. The roseate spoonbill is 65 on the meta wish list, but I think that's partly because the game doesn't have many habitat birds, so people don't really think to request them. Not me though. I need all of the birds I can get, and so you'll be seeing at least one bird in every pack that I propose. I think it might be fun to give the roseate spoonbill interspecies enrichment with the capybara. Next, we have the southern tamandua, which would be another arboreal species, also known as the collared or lesser anteater. They're found throughout South America. The southern tamandua is number 26 on the meta wish list, and I think it would make a good alternative for the flagship of this pack if they don't go with the coati, since we did have the raccoon as the flagship for the Twilight pack, whereas the tamandua is so unique compared to past flagships. Next is the greater rhea, which inhabits open areas of South America. It would be the last ratite we're missing in the game, a group of iconic flightless birds. We have the ostrich, cassowary, emu, and kiwi, and so that leaves the rhea. So I'd love to see it included just for completionist reasons. On the meta wish list, it sits right behind the tamandua at number 27. I'd give them interspecies enrichment with the llama and capybara, maybe the giant anteater and Baird's tapir, and possibly even the maned wolf. The southern kudu is an animal I'd personally love to see added because I have a real soft spot for these guys. They're a South American species of tiny deer, which is a niche I'd love to see filled in the roster. They are number 90 on the meta wish list. The black howler monkey, on the other hand, is number 5 on the meta, making it the most requested species of primate. Yet another arboreal species found in South America. It would be a little silly to put out a Latin America animal pack and not include a species of monkey, which is a group severely lacking in representation. You may even think there should be multiple monkeys in this pack, but don't worry, you'll see what I have planned in my next video. I think I'd give the howler interspecies enrichment with the capuchin, and probably the usual South American suspects as well. That brings us to the exhibit animal slot. Usually scenery packs get a walkthrough exhibit animal and animal packs get a standard exhibit animal, but once again this pattern was broken before it was even established with the butterflies in the Grasslands animal pack. I'm going to be referencing the butterflies quite a bit throughout my roadmap because they technically took up only one slot in the pack, but we got 5 unique reskins, which actually brought the number of species in the pack up from 8 to 12. So I'm proposing we repeat what Frontier did with Grasslands, and in Latin America, finally give us macaws. Macaws would be our first birds in the walkthrough exhibits and set the precedent that we could get more exhibit birds in the future. Although I imagine macaw reskins would be more difficult and time consuming to create than the butterfly reskins, and so just to play it safe, I'm only proposing 4 species of macaws instead of 5. The colorful scarlet macaw, the most iconic species, the blue and yellow or blue and gold macaw, the military macaw for a bit of green, and the hyacinth macaw, which is a rich blue. I think these 4 species offer a great range of colors, and I really think we should get a bird for the walkthrough exhibits sooner rather than later to help the community regain interest and hope for the future of the game. There's one alternative I'd like to propose for this pack before we move on. While I'd personally prefer to get the southern poodoo, I think a more likely pick is the Patagonian mara, also known as the Patagonian cavy or hare. An interesting looking rodent from Argentina, these guys are number 25 on the meta wishlist, making them much more highly requested than the poodoo. Moving on to the DLC for fall 2024, we finally alternate from an animal pack back to a scenery pack, our first one since Oceania last fall. I am proposing the Petting Zoo pack, which would be at least a slightly controversial DLC because I know there are people who have next to no interest in the animals I'm going to be suggesting here, which is why I've placed it pretty early in my hypothetical roadmap. My goal here is to minimize disappointment as we move closer to the end of support, so I think it's a good idea to get this pack out of the way now. Plus, I decided to throw the community a bone right before this pack with macaws as a sort of promise for what's possible in the future. Even though I know a lot of people wouldn't care for a petting zoo pack, there are people like me who would, and Frontier seems to be okay with putting out divisive packs, seeing how the Secret Species pack just came out for Jurassic World Evolution 2, which was all about controversial hybrid dinosaurs. So yes, for the petting zoo pack, I think the obvious flagship should be the Nigerian dwarf goat. This breed derives from West Africa and is so quintessentially petting zoo. I think they would have some excellent color variation, and I just feel like they need to be the face of the pack. Like I said though, these domestic animals aren't very highly requested, and so the Nigerian dwarf goat sits at number 109 on the meta wishlist. Next up, we have the Shetland Pony, which is a Scottish breed. Once again, it's obvious there are much more highly requested animals than these petting zoo species because on the meta, the Shetland Pony is in the 400s. The miniature donkey sits much higher, but since a donkey would be so similar to the Somali wild ass we already have, I think a pony would be better for the game's roster. Plus, pony rides are a pretty common sight in zoos and I think would be fun areas to build, even if only implied. The Rhode Island Red is an American breed of domestic chicken because I don't think you can have a petting zoo pack without a chicken. Plus, it's filling this DLC's bird quota. The Rhode Island Red isn't even on the meta wish list. It's the only habitat animal I'm proposing in this entire roadmap that isn't, which I think is kind of hilarious. However, the Plymouth Rock chicken sits near the Shetland pony in the 400s, so some people do want a domestic chicken. The Ankle Watusi is an American breed of domestic cattle derived from a group of African breeds. I think these guys would be an awesome addition as opposed to a more traditional breed of cow, I guess you could say. Their splotchy patterning and enormous horns would be a sight to see in Planet Zoo, and for that reason, I think they'd make a good alternative for the flagship of the pack instead of the Nigerian dwarf goat. On the meta wish list, they're not far behind the goat at 116. I think I would give all four of these habitat animals interspecies enrichment with each other. Maybe not the pony, but definitely the other three. For the exhibit animal of this pack, we have another walkthrough species, and one that I'm curious to hear if you think would be a good pick. I'm proposing the sugar glider, and my reasoning is that they're popular as pets, so I thought this pack was the best fit for them. Although the US pet population might actually be a species called Crest glider, but in Planet Zoo, I'd keep the name as sugar glider for its recognition factor. Including the Sugar Glider made me consider if a better title for this DLC might be the Children's Zoo Pack, so let me know what you guys think below. I do have some alternative picks, and first up is the helmeted guinea fowl in place of the Rhode Island Red. These guys are a chicken-sized bird from Africa, and they do also have a domesticated form. I've seen them in both large African savanna habitats and in more domestic petting zoo-esque areas, so they definitely offer more versatility than a chicken, and so I'd give them interspecies enrichment with both of those groups. The helmeted guinea fowl is number 51 on the meta wish list, and the more I think about it, the more I may prefer it as my bird pick for this pack. You may notice there isn't a pig in this DLC. If you think pigs would be a necessity in a petting zoo pack, I could see us getting the Vietnamese pot-bellied instead of either the Watusi cattle or the Shetland pony. These guys are obviously a domestic Vietnamese breed of pig, and one of the most iconic. The pot-bellied pig is in the 200s on the meta wish list. And then my last alternative, if you think the exhibit animal should be more on theme, instead of the walkthrough sugar glider, I could see us getting guinea pigs in the standard exhibits. Guinea pigs are rodents that originated in South America and of course are very common pets. They would have some great color variation and would be our first mammal in the standard exhibits, which I do think could work well as guinea pig tanks, as long as they're given a unique interior design, obviously. The enrichment items that we can toggle could be a wheel or a little hide. I think they'd be a really cute and fun addition. Since this is a scenery pack, let's talk a little about the new pieces I would add. I'd go for a dedicated barnyard theme, so I'd include silos, new shade structures, hay bales, more backstage pieces. I'd add those cute standing animal feed dispensers and actually have them be interactable for guests like the vending machines we have. Little hand sanitizing posts would be cute. Maybe some new variations for the guest gate we have for walkthrough habitats. I think there are a lot of little things that could be added to help flesh out the petting zoos we build, but what I think is more important are the new enrichment items that I'd add. In this pack, I would finally introduce realistic feeders, like buckets that maybe snap to a habitat barrier, and definitely more realistic food troughs. I'd also include a placeable play structure for the goats. You could, of course, build your own piece by piece, but with this enrichment item, they'd interact with it much more smoothly, like a domestic version of the goat climbing mountain we have for the doll sheep and the ibex. Definitely let me know what other stuff you'd like to see added in a petting zoo pack beyond the animals, since I'm not the best at suggesting new scenery. This is one DLC where I'll also talk a bit about the accompanying free update. Alongside this pack, I'd love to see giraffe feeding finally implemented in the game, which I think is the most important animal-human interaction to have in a zoo game. I think the way this could work is if the update adds a placeable item like a vista point that can snap to the edge of a habitat or be placed on its own. This would be an item that both guests and animals can recognize. And then, like how two animals sync up for a social animation, the animal and guest would sync up, approach the item, and then play out a little animation where they interact. This might even function as an enrichment item for compatible species, which without this DLC would probably just be the giraffe. I could maybe see this being added for the llama and the dromedary camel, but it's a feature I definitely give to the goat and pony, and then maybe the other species in this DLC. Every year at the start of November, we get an anniversary update to the game, and with that update always comes a brand new animal. The anniversary animal is usually relatively easy to make, and ideally it offers something that the base game doesn't already have. The black and white ruffed lemur didn't really do this, but then the red deer gave the base game a species of deer, which was fantastic. And then the collared peccary added a swine from the Americas. I know they aren't actually swines, but you get my point. For the 2024 anniversary animal, I'm going to suggest the Nile crocodile, which would add an African crocodilian to the game. Right now, the only crocodile we have, even after all of these DLCs, is the saltwater crocodile, which is from South Asia and Oceania. The Nile crocodile is the most highly requested crocodilian at number 36 on the meta wish list, which hilariously is higher than every species I put in the last DLC. I think it would be a very well received anniversary animal since it's a popular pick. So for winter of 2024, we have a pack that should be much less controversial than the last one, and it's also a bit of a throwback. We have the return of the Alpine Animal Pack. This is the DLC that I was expecting last winter, but then to my surprise, we got Eurasia instead. The rest of the community and I were on the right track though, because Eurasia gave us the Wolverine and the Takin, which are two species that I would have included in an Alpine roster. So the fact that we now have them clears up 2 spots in this revised version of the pack. For the flagship of this DLC, I'm going for a not so obvious choice, the Paulus's cat, a small species of wildcat found throughout the hilly landscapes of Central Asia. They have an undeniable cuteness factor that I think would help sell the pack, which is part of why I picked them as the flagship. These guys kick off the top 20 on the meta wish list. My next pick is the Markhor, which would be a great alternative for this pack's flagship. The main reason I gave it to the Paulus's cat instead was actually to avoid having 2 goats in a row headlining DLCs. But if the Watusi cattle were the flagship for the Petting Zoo pack instead, then I think the Markhor should definitely be the flagship for Alpine since they represent this pack so well. These guys are a large wild goat from the mountains of South Asia, similar to the Dall sheep and ibex. They sit at number 13 on the meta wish list. Third, we have an interesting pick for this DLC, but a necessary one. It's the Goodfellows tree kangaroo. You may think they don't really fit in an alpine animal pack, but they are actually found in the mountainous forests of Papua New Guinea. And when planning out all these DLCs, this pack ended up being the best fit for the tree kangaroos. They're a very highly requested arboreal species, with the Goodfellows sitting at number 4 on the meta wish list, and the Matt Cheese tree kangaroo at 43. With their popularity amongst the community, I could even see the Goodfellows being used as the flagship, but I think other species would be better representatives for an alpine pack. The wild yak is a large bovine native to the Himalayas, although there is also a domesticated species. Wild yaks aren't really kept in captivity, but I could see Frontier still basing theirs off of the wild version for consistency with, say, the wild water buffalo. But then again, I just suggested an entire petting zoo pack, so maybe it wouldn't be a big deal to go off the domestic yak. Either way, I want a yak, and I'd be using it as the domestic version, regardless of what it's called in-game. The wild yak is number 75 on the meta, and the domestic yak is down in the 200s. If these guys were added, I'd consider giving them interspecies enrichment with some of the petting zoo species, since that's one area that I'd be using them. Next up, meeting our bird quota for this pack, we have the golden pheasant, which is native to the mountainous forests of China. I think Planet Zoo could use a pheasant, and these guys would be a really pretty addition. They sit at number 66 on the meta. The spectacled bear is one of the last remaining species of bear the game is missing. It's also known as the Andean bear or South American bear because it is native to, you guessed it, the Andes Mountains of South America. It's the only bear native to the continent, which is what makes it so special. You may have noticed its absence in the Latin America animal pack, and that's because I thought it fit really well here instead. The spectacled bear is number 14 on the meta wish list, making it the most requested species of bear, but again, we have nearly all of the other ones. Next is the elk, also known as the wapiti. It is the second largest species of deer behind the moose and is native to both North America and East Asia. These guys are found in forests and grasslands, but also mountainous areas. And there is a subspecies of elk known for living in the Rocky Mountains, so I do think they fit this pack. The elk is number 33 on the meta and the most highly requested species of deer. That leaves the exhibit animal for this pack, and shout out to Old Country for putting this species on my radar. We have the Chinese giant salamander, one of the world's largest amphibians and a great pick for an alpine animal pack since it's found exclusively in the Rocky Mountain streams of central China. They're quite big, but I think they could still work in the standard exhibit boxes. No alternatives for this pack. I think all of these are great picks. There are 3 ungulates, but I think the other species are so unique that they more than make up for it. Um, and that's it for 2024. Console Edition followed by 3 DLCs, 2 animal packs, and a scenery pack. Let me know what you guys think. My next video going through 2025 will be out soon, picking up right where we left off for spring. I will say my 2024 packs still kind of play it safe. Aside from the macaws, there weren't too many really exciting inclusions, too many big swings, you could say. But that will definitely be changing with my 2025 suggestions. Thanks again for all the love on my previous 2 videos. Go watch those if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys again pretty soon. Bye!